Alright, welcome back to the channel. If you're here for the first time, please like and subscribe. Today we're going to be going over how to put on this transmission. Okay, let's go ahead and remove the bolts to the pressure plate, and then we'll remove the flywheel. Okay, let's remove the bolts on the flywheel. It uses 17 millimeter. First thing we're going to put on is the flywheel. This flywheel right here. You want to make sure you use new bolts because it's torque yield bolts, and the torque on these bolts is 39 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and install this flywheel, and it only goes on one way. So when you line up the screws, are your new bolts. It should slip on there pretty easy. Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and screw those in. Alright, now we got those in there. Let's go ahead and torque them down. 39 foot-pounds. I already got my wrench set. Okay, we're going to go ahead and install this clutch plate, and the springs face towards the pressure plate. So I'm not an expert at this, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot and see if I can do this without any trouble. These are also torque yield bolts, so you want to make sure you get new ones for this too, according to Chevrolet. And this is an aluminum flywheel, so the torque on these bolts is 19 foot-pounds. I have this handy dandy little tool here to help me center the clutch plate. So when we go to put the transmission in, it will be somewhat aligned. That's kind of important. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Tighten these bolts up. I think it's 22 foot-pounds of torque, and I have this nice little thing to help me center clutch. I've tightened two of them down already to make sure I got this thing centered, so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten the rest of these up. Alright, we're getting close to getting ready to put this in, and what I wanted to show you was before you put this thing up in there, you might want to remove this little thing right here. If you don't remove that, what will happen is you'll have a hard time shifting it and it won't shift right, and you'll be going, what is wrong with this thing? So anyway, that needs to be removed. Make sure you take it completely out. So when I start this thing up again, we're going to be throwing it inside the car. Okay, you can see we're getting ready to install that. You just got to make sure you get the shaft on the splines on the clutch disc and line those up good, and then just push it on. I'm not going to show exactly how we get it on there, but you guys can figure that out. It's not that difficult. If you took it off, it goes on the same way, and we'll talk to you in a minute. Alright, you can see we've put this other brace on top of the transmission now, this one right here, and that connects to here. So can you see that in there? I know it's kind of tight, but you can see that brace right there goes on top of the transmission. I'm going to go ahead and connect that to this, and I'll show you the starter next. Alright, that's what it looks like when the brace is up on top is completely finished. Just to show you that. Alright, make sure you get that starter back on, and make sure you get this ground wire back on, and that's it on the starter. Alright, you can see we got the starter in. I'm going to show you back here because I've already installed the mount in the back, and you can see how that looks. And I got to move a few wires out of the way from that exhaust, but it looks pretty good. I haven't installed the front mount yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. Alright, we're going to go over how to modify the speed pickup on from your F35. Basically what you do is you trim the case off of it, and then you fill it with silicone, and I'll show you. You use a Dremel tool or anything you have to remove it, but you got to be careful. You don't want to cut any of the wires, so you don't want to go deep into that thing, but just enough to get that plastic cover off, and I'll show you what it looks like after I get it off. Alright, this is what it looks like after the cover's taken off. I just took a Dremel tool and put it right to the edge of that lip and just cut it off. You need to be careful you don't cut those little wires, because those are what make it the signal go to your speedometer. And what this is a speed pickup, and it's magnetic, and it just picks up the teeth and it produces the sine wave, and it goes into your PCM and it converts it. I mean, it's just a frequency, so that's what it does. So now what do is I take some silicone and I cover it all the way around it to cover it up to keep it from getting a bunch of oil on it. And I'll show you how this thing fits right in the hole. So you can see it fits in there real nice. This is the original one that came out of it. And I can never get the signal to work. I mean, there's probably a way to do it, but I never took the time to figure it out. I just figured that out, and there's probably a better way to do it. But anyway, that's what I did for my pickup for my son's car, and it worked like a champ. And then you have to drill a hole into this little bracket right here that lines up with the hole, so it can hold that on. And that's it. That's how you modify that speed control. Alright, so what you're going to need to do is extend this speed control cable about 5 inches, because it goes around the bracket that holds your cables in place. And so I'm going to do that right now. Alright, this is what my cable looks like after I extended it. I have some shrink tubing that I used, and then I used a little gas torch to melt the shrink tubing on there, or shrink it. It's pretty simple to do. This is my soldering iron, and that's what I used to connect the wires with, just in case you were wondering. Okay, so before we install the shifter cables, I'm going to go ahead and install this speed control. You can put this You can put this on before, you know, you go ahead and install the transmission, but I waited till now. I put a little bead of silicone at the top of it so it's not going to leak any oil once we're going down the road and all the transmission oil goes all over. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. There you go. And then I just used the original screw that came with it. Put in there. I think that's a 10mm. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install this little bracket here. And this is what holds your shifter cables in place, and it goes just like that. There's two bolts that stick out from the transmission. I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. While we're down here, we might as well move this bolt. It connects to the shifter cables, and those shifter cables are going to have to be removed and replaced, so we might as well do that while we're down here. I've already loosened it up. It'll be easy to remove. That way when we go to remove it from the inside, it'll slide right out. Alright, next step in the process is we need to remove these old shifter cables. This thing pops off pretty easy. Then you pull your glass holders out, cup holders out. After you get those out, go ahead and pop this thing up. Oh, I'm gonna have to. You have to remove this off next. Pull this up. Pull that off. Remove this. Then you can remove this. Put that down. You have to disconnect these wires. There's two of them. Once you get the two wires connected, disconnected to your 12-volt outlets, then you can pull that off. Now I'll bring you down here inside of the shifter where you can see what's going on. You're going to have to remove these cables here from the shifter, and there's 4 bolts that you got to remove in order to remove the shifter, because you're going to be putting a new shifter in there. It's really simple to do. We'll go ahead and just remove them, then I'll get this thing and show you how to remove these cables out of the cab. Okay, I've got the new shifter in there, and you can see it's the 6-speed one out of the Buick. It fits right down in there. It only has 3 bolts that come up from the bottom of the car, and I have these. I'm using little solid mount washers underneath it. There's like a little kit that you can buy, and then a washer, and then the nut, and then they just snap in there. The white one goes on the left side, the black one goes on the right side. And on this, you can see the back of this, you need to pull those little staples out and remove this piece right here, and then you put the piece from your old shifter and use that to snap it down into this little ring right here. So you use your old shifter, the beauty ring that goes around that, and it'll fit right in there, and looks real good. You won't even be able to tell it's not factory. Alright, now what you're going to want to do is you want to cut these little tabs off, or you won't be able to position your valve in the right location, so it can move around a little bit. So trim those off with the Dremel, and you'll be good to go on that. Alright, so you can see now this is the new one I have, this adjustable rod. What we're going to do is go ahead and measure the length of that rod that's on the old one and get it the same, and that way we don't overextend the clutch. And anyway, I'm going to do that right now off camera. Another tip I have for you on this is when you do shove it through the hole, you know, stick it in there, don't turn it counterclockwise to get it locked in. First go in there and make sure this thing is hooked into your clutch where it goes, and you'll know when you go to take it out. The way to take it out is you squeeze these two things together and get it out. It's difficult. It can be done, but you may have to use a couple of screwdrivers, but I didn't have much luck trying to get it out very easy. So anyway, good luck on it. But that's what you need if you're going to be using the heavier duty clutch, because this thing will bend eventually and it won't shift right, and you'll be able to adjust it and get it so it shifts perfect. So it's a great product from ZZP, and I suggest that you purchase one if you're going to put a heavy duty clutch in. Alright, now I've got the hoses hooked up on it. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's this hose, the one in the front, and then the one on the top here. I've got those connected again. So then after you get that done, make sure you top off your oil. It's .3 brake fluid, so make sure you fill that up so you don't get any air in your system. I lost a lot of brake fluid when I did it, and sometimes that happens. So hopefully that will happen with you, but it probably will. And that's it. That's how you install it. Alright, before you forget, or don't forget, is that you put your oil in your transmission. This is the stuff that ZZP likes. It's the MT90. It's a little different than factory. I think it's 75/90 versus it's 75/85 is the factory viscosity, but should work. But just remember to put that in before you put your fuse box on, because you can see everything's kind of in a way, and that's where your fill plug is right there on top of your transmission. It'd be kind of hard to get to when you get your fuse box in. Alright, let's go ahead and install the fuse box. And just like that, the fuse box is in, along with the PCM.